basically got a story when kindergartners or first graders are discussing the colonial period, the pioneer settlements, colony builders, that they can begin the story in New Amsterdam. And, well, I'm going ahead of myself for the second page, but the Native American story could certainly be here. We're helped by archaeologists, but just the idea of a shell mound in Pearl Street. I'm not sure if the founders of the Holland Society, God bless them, were really thinking of when they think of those shells that define Pearl Street, of having something to do with Native American culture. Very often they're just sort of mentioned as a midden, as a throwaway. Well, the natives weren't throwing away anything. They had a certain purpose for those shells, and I'm helped really much with the archaeologists such as the esteemed Dr. Grossman, who did a dig on Pearl Street, and with the talk about interdisciplinary, the idea that we can talk about the culture of the Native American, history, and also science. I've got contacts up at the planetarium. You may know that Neil deGrasse Tyson is very interested in this whole sun phenomenon. Just a little element of culture, which if you were to explore in the first grade, just with, oh my goodness, here are the Native Americans, and they've got a ceremony dedicated to the sun. Well, we've got that in our own calendar. We have Sunday. We've got Greeks and Romans, and basically every continent's got some sort of a relationship to the sun, and they can do something here. But you can do it at different levels. From the first grade might be your introductory, and then the fourth grade, and then the seventh grade. The second page is the freedom and slavery in New Amsterdam. And this, too, thinking of it in terms of both a lesson plan and an exhibition. When I say exhibition, by the way, just as lessons plans can come together with 20 or 30 elements or more, the traveling exhibition, as I would see it, might have 20 or 30 panels. And they could be different sizes, but they would incorporate, they could be done within one particular panel. I didn't show you completely how with this process, but this is sort of the model that we use to with our exhibition with UNESCO and telling the history of slavery. By using the primary sources, I'm very fortunate to call the guy up in Albany named Charlie Garing back in 91 or 92, and basically the relevant primary documents as they relate to the enslaved African experience, Charlie's got me. He was very helpful about that. It would also incorporate illustrations of people like Len Tantillo who could work, because there aren't that many illustrations of either Native American or African American, but I found that working with artists and using some historical images that they come up with quite a lot. One element, it's more or less at the Schomburg Center, we're having sort of an emerging philosophy of the E words in freedom. And we think of freedom with two E's, and we generally think of them meaning enlightenment and enterprise, but they also mean expansion and enslavement. They can mean, and frankly, the story of New Amsterdam, New Netherland, I think is the best story in America, because you're going to learn good stuff, you're going to learn some maybe not so good stuff. You're going to learn the path that we took over the last 350 years, which my sense of whatever curriculum is developed has to have some relevance. It's got to have a relevance to American history. And I find too that in the curriculum involving slavery, there is no better story than New Amsterdam, New Netherland, because you're able to talk about contributions. People were helping to clear the land, they're helping to develop the colony. It's not a story of victimization. And I know recently I was reading that psychologists are finding that in the study of the Holocaust, that you have to be careful with with the sort of way that you treat conditions like that, things that can cause feedback in responses that you weren't thinking about. I'm not a psychologist, but I do know that for most African American children don't see themselves in the curriculum until they're talked about as slaves. So to me, the idea of doing this on a grade 1 level helps them to see themselves. It's really people at work. They're widening that Native American trail. They're clearing that land. They're helping the colony so that white children, black children, Asian children can see themselves as children. I have my 6-year-old first grade son. He doesn't know what slavery is. And he's blessed to be a descendant of Native Americans and the Dutch and the Africans, but if I was him, he's less apt to mention the Africans. It becomes a sort of a psychological thing. You know, sometimes we would see the cowboys and the Indians. You would identify with the cowboy rather than the Indians. So it's got some links there. Going on to page 4, which I was so awed to hear the testimony about the experience of Shua Israel, because this is really what I'm talking about in terms of religious freedom in America. And frankly, to hear the testimony, I didn't realize just how big this one could be. You know, and we've got our own such a fascinating experience with religion here, because you've got our first church, which was the Protestant Dutch church, but it's got a relationship with the company. And I find that fascinating because, as we may all know in this room, that the oldest corporation in America is the Collegiate Church. So you start to see not only it's not really just a story of religion, but it's a story about the people who are accompanying the religions into New Amsterdam. Page 4 is a lesson for Birth of American Traditions in Amsterdam, in New Amsterdam. And there's just so many elements of this, of the type of traditions, whether it be food, music. I've just tried to put down a few things here that people can, or children can connect to, either in grades 1, 4, 7. And again, I can't emphasize enough of trying to go to that earliest grade possible. 1, that you take advantage of that pilgrim story, of the kids are building little Native American villages here. We've got Christmas. I mean, people can argue about, you know, just the track of St. Nicholas, but it's definitely, it's a New York story, and not just of New Amsterdam, but of the later writers of Clement Clark Moore and Washington Irving. I'm going to wrap up now because my wooziness.
Okay.
But anyway, that's all this is. It's more or less just I'm lucky enough to get paid to write as a historian, but I honestly, we're talking among friends, I feel best as sort of an evangelist when it comes to the history of our city. And to me, it starts with the Native American experience, with the Dutch experience, the European and African. It's an unforced, truly diverse story. There is not, and teachers of elementary schools are always coming to we're calling the Schomburg Center, looking for models. There is no other community that you can talk about a 17th century relationship, a colonial relationship, where you can include free whites, free blacks, and Native Americans. And beyond the little psychological issues that I mentioned before, it's a perfect story, and I think I'm preaching to the choir anyway. But
Chris,
that was my pitch.
thank you. Are you making this presentation as...
Well, I don't read I get 50 emails a day, and I didn't really read what we were supposed to do today.
No, I understand.
But but at the same time, when there was a sort of the pitch element, I used to write curriculum in the mid-90s, but I'm into exhibition work these days, and the idea of developing not only materials that could go to New York State classrooms, but American classrooms, but around it. This is an exportable story, you know. And I overheard somebody talk about marketing. We're blessed in the fact that small colony became the greatest city in the world, you know. And there's so many ways that we can get into, whether that be the Native Americans when they're down there doing the shells. That's kind of their Thanksgiving. So to me, we want to take part of that Thanksgiving story and talk about what the natives were doing. Christmas, I say we take advantage of, you know, any first grader, if they're going to be doing little pageants about Santa Claus and St. Nicholas, let's give them some facts to deal with. Let's at least relate to to true history. And